Hi, welcome to this presentation, Homeopathy, More Than Just Water. I'm Dr. Paul, and along with my colleague Dr. Dorothy Bray, we created the MD Pharma brand of pain relief. Our products are listed with the FDA as over-the-counter drugs, which requires them to be manufactured under good manufacturing processes and meet their labeling requirements. Our FDA listings designate them as homeopathic drugs, which often conjure up some negative sentiments. So we thought it might be of interest to you to describe our understanding of homeopathy. I'm going to do that with the aid of some slides, and I hope to show that homeopathy is more than just water. The fundamental tenet of homeopathy is that like treats like. This concept was created by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann in the 1790s. It is centered on the belief that a compound that causes a specific symptom in a healthy person then may be used in a non-toxic level to treat that symptom in a sick patient. Obviously, to create a non-toxic dose, the compound needs to be diluted. Now, our interpretation of this approach, considering that it was all being done in the 1800s, when there was no understanding of the mechanisms of action, they only had the means to test the physiological effects of potential drugs in healthy volunteers, what was called a proving, or a rudimentary phase 1 study. Because they make claims, homeopathic formulas are in fact drugs. And this actually stems from the fact that in 1938, with the introduction of the Food Drug Cosmetic Act, one of the sponsors was a Dr. Royal Copeland, who in fact was a homeopathic physician, and he wanted this practice included under the Act. In this way, under the Food Drug Cosmetic Act, there were two pharmacopoeias, the United States Pharmacopoeia and the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia of the United States, often shortened to HPUS. It should be noted that a product's listing within the HPUS or USP or even the NF does not mean that it is determined to be safe, effective, and not misbranded for its intended use by the FDA. It's also worth noting that drug products containing homeopathic ingredients in combination with non-homeopathic active ingredients are not homeopathic drugs. Now, this interpretation is taken from an older 1988 guidance provided by the FDA, which has subsequently been retracted and the new guidance issued, but it gives some sense of where the FDA were coming from in their allowance of homeopathic drugs to be marketed. Under the older guidance provided by the FDA, any drug that was labeled as homeopathic had to follow specific parameters in order to remain considered as a homeopathic drug. That included using a reference published by John Henry Clark in the 1900s, whose Materia Medica gave indications and dosing guidance on what could be used for specific indications. Interestingly, many common allopathic drugs are included in that Materia Medica. The guidance also required that reference be reviewed in conjunction with other available literature, which we interpreted to mean that we would look at modern published information to get more data on the application of the specific actives. Another Materia Medica that's commonly used is Borix. Now, it's interesting to note that the new guidance provided by the FDA does not give the line-by-line guidance that was in the older publication, and it seems now that homeopathic drugs will really be classified as grandfathered products. Of course, to make a homeopathic drug, it has to be diluted. There are several methods by which this can be done, but the most common is to take the bulk solution and dilute it either 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 in serial dilutions to reach the desired dilution strength. And this is done according to the needs of the physician. So, for example, 1 gram of active in a 100 ml or 100 gram of the diluent is a 2x solution or a 1C, and therefore 2x is a 1% or a 10 milligram per ml product. Most dilutions are in the 12x or 6C range, which is picogram, Though many practitioners and manufacturers use extraordinarily high dilutions beyond 30C or 10 to the power of 60 when no molecule could possibly remain. Now, this is the greatest criticism of homeopathy. You've got nothing but water. It is based on the belief that water has memory or is energized, which is called potentiation. This was done through an energetic shaking process during the mixing phases. Therefore, the more dilute the product, the more potentized or potent the product was. A very difficult concept to grasp. There was a distinct group of homeopaths in the 1800s that rejected this Hahnemannism concept and took a more allopathic approach. The HPUS does not commonly use high potency formulas, though some drugs can be biologically active at very low strength, i.e. in femtograms, which is 10 to the power of 15. Here's a list of drugs that can be considered homeopathic. Of course, these are also recognized as common drugs used today in allopathic medicine. It seems that any drug that was in use prior to the 1900s can be considered homeopathic. A homeopathic drug does not always have to be natural. It can be synthetic, as an example here is phenacetin or aspirin, or it can come from an unexpected source, like nitroglycerin, which is an explosive. While the dose strength was defined, the quantity administered was not. And also, dose provided in the Materia Medicas was only a recommendation. So can like treat like? Well, our first example is nitroglycerin, which is actually a well-known drug today. It was discovered in 1847, and its inventor discovered that if he put a drop under his tongue, he got a pounding headache. Constantine Hering noted this activity and thought that it actually may serve, if it was diluted, as a treatment for headache. He did, however, manage to notice the fact that it had a significant impact on the heart. In the mid-19th century, scientists in Britain realized it was a powerful vasodilator and began to use the drug to treat angina. And in fact, it is listed as part of the treatment indications for nitroglycerin under the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia. In Fay's article on nitroglycerin, a homeopathic remedy, it would seem that nitroglycerin would not be available to modern medicine today if it hadn't been for the homeopathic approach. Alfred Nobel, who took nitroglycerin to create dynamite, was so impressed with the advances in medicine at the end of the 19th century that he left his fortune to the Nobel Foundation, which were to issue prizes for great discoveries in the fields of medicine, physics, and other areas. Our second example is nausea or cobra venom. This was introduced to homeopathic medicine by, again, Constantine Hering, and the proving was conducted in 1853 by Rutherford Russell, and it was based on its neuropathic activity. The homeopathic strength that was preferred at the time was 4x, or 0.1 milligram per mil, and often moving to a higher strength or lower potency if it was necessary to get a better impact. In 1940, it was actually FDA approved as an injectable analgesic, and again in 1954 for the treatment of arthritis. Boric, in his Materia Medica of 1901, suggested that cobra venom, because of the condition it created during envenomation, may in fact be useful treatment for polio. Over 50 years later, a physician by the name of Murray Sanders published a paper in 1954 where he found that cobra venom could be used to treat experimental poliomyelitis in monkeys. Later, cobra venom was used clinically in the 1950s to treat children with polio in an outbreak in Cuba. Sanders was awarded the Cuban Carlos Findlay Medal of Honor and was nominated for a Nobel Prize in 1966 for his work. The idea of like treats like was also applied to crotalus or rattlesnake venom. It is suggested in Clark's Materia Medica that it can be used to treat pain, yellow fever, and cancer. And Crotalus durissus venom is certainly used as a folk medicine for the treatment of pain. In 1870, there was a publication that suggested that Crotalus venom could be utilized to treat yellow fever purely on the premise of its similarity during envenomation. Quite recently, investigations into this particular venom have demonstrated that the venom does in fact have an analgesic component to it, that one of the main neurotoxins in the durissus venom has potent antiviral activity against a variety of viruses, which include HIV, herpes, but here dengue and yellow fever viruses. And then, furthermore, Crotalus durissus terrificus venom has established a great interest as a source of agents that could be used to treat cancer. And in fact, there are clinical trials ongoing with crotoxin for that specific indication. In our fourth example of like to treat like, centers on moccasin venom. In Clark's Materia Medica from 1900, it suggested it should be used to treat periodic neuralgia. Envenomation with moccasin venom does cause painful blistering, and that certainly might explain why its use in the 1940s centered on its use in herpes zoster and even other types of pain. I should note that the snake venom solution provided for these studies was manufactured by Lederle, and the product was actually an FDA registered drug at the time. It is commonly understood that the venom of pit vipers is a hemorrhagic venom, so it would seem counterintuitive to use it for the treatment of hemorrhagia. But here we are with publications that utilize the venom successfully to treat certain types of hemorrhagic diseases. Again, it looks like the venom was provided by Lederle for these studies. On this slide, it seems that the concept of using like to treat like still exists in the 21st century, where the authors suggest that a venom that causes significant pain in the host may in fact be a source of analgesic products to be used by the clinician. Something to take into consideration is the fact that certain drugs may have variable activities depending on the state of the host. Here, cobra venom is shown to have both immune stimulating effects and yet may also be utilized to suppress negative autoimmune type reactions. So this would be consistent with the homeopathic approach. So this is our summary slide. Homeopathic products are drugs regulated by health authorities. There are many allopathic medications that can also be considered as homeopathic, and they will often have the same indications, although homeopathic drugs tend to have a more extensive application. There is some logic to the notion that like can treat like. There is clinical proof of efficacy, especially if you consider point number 2. And many homeopathic drugs are more than just water. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like or subscribe to be notified when we create some more videos. If you want to learn more about our products, click on the link below. Until then, see you later.